Hey everyone, I'm Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and today we're going to be looking at the Cryorig Taku. Now, being a big fan of IKEA furniture myself, which you probably all know based on the video that we did where we kind of rearranged this whole studio, it was kind of one of them things when I first clocked eyes on this at Computex 2016, I knew that, I really wanted to follow its progress. And then when I again saw it at Computex 2017, it was actually sort of taken one step further in terms of starting up with a Kickstarter campaign. Sadly, it didn't meet its $100,000 target, but what Cryorig actually did is they teamed up with Lian Li for the manufacturing, and well, you can see that in the quality, this is exactly where they kind of wanted things to go. Now, priced at £299 in the UK and $299 in the US, it's not exactly cheap, but Cryorig, Lian Li combined, well, it can only mean good things, right? So let's take a look and see exactly what it's all about. So let's start by talking about the theme of the Taku. Now, what this is all about is not just being a computer chassis, it actually doubles up as a monitor stand. And it can take monitors up to 15 kilos, which should be, pretty achievable for most general setups in today's world. Now, what you actually find is Cryorig actually brand this as improving your posture while also giving you a great setup, purely because you're going to have that monitor at eye level. One really cool thing about the Taku is the fact that it has space underneath, which not only along with the top sort of aids in ventilation, which should give us really good cooling results, also doubles up as a bit of a space to put your keyboard and mouse. Now, in terms of the dimensions, it can take keyboards up to 460mm long and 53mm high. This is equivalent to a full-size 104 key mechanical keyboard, so you shouldn't really have any issues here. And personally, I actually really like this because it just allows things to be sort of neat and tidy. Again, adding to that kind of IKEA-esque feel, something that, I really actually like. Now, one thing where the Taku actually really does differ to most general kind of chassis out there is it actually works on a rail system design. So the internal part of the chassis actually sort of slides in and out. Now, this is actually really, really cool because it allows you to sort of have easy access to all of your components as and when you need them, but is also fully detachable. So essentially, you're not just taking out the motherboard tray, you're taking out the whole unit. And this is really nice if you do have maybe a problem or even just on that first installation. You can take it out, work on everything, and just simply slide it back in. And it is really, really easy to detach. It's just a matter of kind of pressing two buttons on the side of the rail. So as I say, this kind of makes things, well, generally fuss-free. And something that I actually really, really like. Again, it just kind of adds to that whole sort of mantra of being clean, crisp, but having functionality as well. With a kind of chassis like this, I think a lot of the talk comes of having style over substance, whereas you can clearly see with this, they've actually thought about both sides of it. One thing I do like about this is Cryorig have actually thought about, I guess, the type of people that this chassis is going to be aimed at. So people who maybe work in the professional sector. So what they've actually done is they've got two cutouts that is really nice because what you can actually do is you can route USB cables from the rear all the way through the chassis and out the top. This is going to be great for charging your mobile phone or other devices. Now, sadly, at this price point, I would have liked to have seen maybe a Qi charger kind of incorporated into it, but I'm not actually sure where it would go. If they tried to put it in one of the corners near the front, obviously it would cut out some of the ventilation, which may cause some major issue with cooling. But it still would have been nice to have it, especially at that really high price point. Now, when it comes to other features, you do have an external I/O, which is situated on the side of the chassis. This includes two USB 3.0 ports and two 3.5mm audio ports. And it is really hard to miss that massive power button on the front, which is illuminated in white when the system is turned on. Again, even with that I/O of USBs and 3.5mm jacks, at this price point, I probably would have liked to have seen USB Type-C. Maybe this is something that could be implemented at a later date, but being sort of quite a unibody system, I don't think it's something they can really do. Hopefully there might be a Taku 2 where they kind of, listen to some of this feedback and maybe, give the consumers what they want. USB Type-C is definitely becoming more prevalent now, so it is really sad that, well, it just isn't there. So features aside, we want to obviously talk about the sheer size of this thing. So it actually measures in 142mm by 570mm by 310mm and weighs in at 5.3 kg. Obviously it does the job really, really well when you're talking about sort of clearing your desk space. It's essentially ditching the usual kind of tower design and actually going back to something that, well, we used to have in the 90s and early 2000s. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. There was, I guess, a reason that we did have that type of chassis, but there is also a reason why we ditched it. But I'm just glad that this actually serves multiple purposes. They haven't just gone with a desktop design for the sake of doing something different. Like I say, you put your monitor on top, your keyboard underneath, it has the functionality behind it as well. As I mentioned, this weighs in at 5.3 kilograms, which isn't a great deal, and there's a very good reason. It's actually made out of 2mm thick aluminium with anodized sandblasted exterior. The case is already raised slightly for ventilation, but one of the main selling points is that it can optionally sit on two much taller handcrafted wooden legs, which are attached using 3 screws for each leg. As this is real wood, no two Takus look exactly alike, and this is really solid craftsmanship. The wood gives it a very IKEA-esque feel, and it's nice to see something a bit aesthetically different. Cryorig advertise it as being the centerpiece of any desk or workstation, and it's easy to see why. With the legs attached, it does attract attention. Both the case and the wooden legs come in a variety of colour combinations, including red, black and white. Personally, I don't think I would actually use this without the legs. It kind of adds, obviously, extra ventilation for the cooling aspects of it, but also does give you that space to kind of put everything away nice and neatly. Yes, some people aren't going to be a fan of wood, but I mean, I don't really like wood. I'm more of a crisp white kind of person, but I don't know, for some reason, this just seems to work. Internally, the Taku is a great fit for any high-end ITX system. Like I said earlier, professionals, maybe a video editor or someone doing CAD, they'd be able to actually fit quite a lot in here, but it does take some initial thought about kind of where you're going to lay things out and how you're going to run sort of cable routing and things like that, because being an ITX system, obviously space is a premium. Internally, the system tray is divided into compartments, which makes upgrading individual components nice and simple, and the intended layout is intuitive and easy to see. Cable management is facilitated by specialised covers for aesthetics and improved airflow, and we found this to work well. Combined with the pull-out ability of the system tray, this has the potential to be a very neat case. So what you will find is that it does include integrated standoffs for the motherboard installation, and that's actually very much welcome. They naturally follow their ITX form factor. I mean, when you're using ITX, there's only 4 holes on the motherboard, so why do you need to be able to sort of actually take the standoffs off anyway? You can't fit anything bigger than an ITX board in here, so well, it doesn't make sense to. So I'm actually glad that Cryorig have thought about little things like this. As far as a small form factor system goes, this is actually pretty large when you're talking about sheer volume. Purely because, yes, it is quite large in length as well as depth, but it's not actually that tall in height. So what you actually find is that it has a dual purpose of fitting around your monitor and keyboard, but also housing really some of the latest and greatest components. It can horizontally fit full-size GPUs up to 280mm in length and also up to 40mm in height, which is very nice, but it's worth mentioning, well, they only actually fit dual slot cards. So again, it's something that really you have to think about when you're planning out your system and you have to kind of decide exactly what's going to go in here. It's just little things like this that maybe are going to be a little more, I don't know, trying, I guess, when you're speccing up your build. The drive cages are easily installed or removed via a single thumb screw and can house up to two 2.5-inch SSDs and a single 3.5-inch hard drive between them. You'll definitely benefit here from the on-rail design as it makes accessing your internal storage devices extremely convenient. It has sufficient space and cooling for the most powerful ITX motherboards and CPUs on the market, with a 52mm max memory height. It generally does a very good job of saving space while not skimping on the ability to spec up your PC. As I said, you can actually fit quite a lot of powerful components in here. You're talking maybe Z390 motherboards with full-size sort of 1080s, maybe if you could just fit it in there. There's some really sort of good stuff, and especially when you see the likes of Zotac and now even Gigabyte coming out with mini ITX-based graphics cards, you're able to really harness the power of full-size graphics cards in a small form factor, something that's perfect for this size chassis. In terms of power supply support, as I said, you are kind of restricted by the height of the chassis, so therefore you can only actually fit SFX or SFXL power supplies. Though if your SATA power cables are shorter than 45cm, you will have to use extensions. We recommend something like Cable Mod or Mod 1 for a nice look, although with this type of chassis, you're never actually going to see them cables, so maybe it doesn't really make sense spending extra money on cables that frankly, you just aren't going to see. CPU coolers with a max height of 48mm are supported, but based on the type of system you're likely to house in here, you won't need anything too overkill anyway. The website also states that some heatsinks will fit if used with a thinner fan, though we didn't test this one out. One 92mm system fan is included, and there are 4 large vents for cooling, 2 on the top of the case and 1 on each side. Now, before we actually started filming this, I ended up building up this rig and everything, and I got some pictures onto social media, and a lot of people were quite worried about sort of general ventilation. But I'm happy to say that temperatures were kind of where we expected it to be. Obviously, when you look at a small form factor system, temperatures are going to be a little bit higher, but on this, because you have this sheer amount of ventilation on the top, on the sides, at the back, it didn't really hinder anything that we were trying to do. We even ran a few sort of game tests, a few rendering tests, and well, everything was well within their limits. In terms of dust filters, it does come with 4 included, but sadly they're all actually on top. You have 2 on this side and 2 over this side. Now, it would have actually been nice to maybe see one underneath the graphics card where it's sucking the air from underneath the chassis, but I don't know, maybe there's some method in the madness and there's a particular reason why they just simply didn't include one there. In terms of accessories, you're provided with a GPU riser card, 2 extension cables, a 24-pin and an 8-pin, along with various screws and some rubber pads for the legs. As we mentioned earlier, this chassis is actually marketed by Cryorig, but it's actually made in Lian Li's factory. Now, as we all know, Lian Li produced some of the best quality cases on the market, and the Taku is, well, no different. So I guess really we should end this with what my thoughts are. So, I mean, the Taku is stylish, there's no doubt about it. There's nothing really on the market that is even remotely similar. The build quality is very, very good, but it's kind of what we expected from something that's made in, Lian Li's factory. The wooden legs are a very nice touch. I think it's going to be a bit love or hate, and maybe it would have been nice to have something that kind of matches in with the chassis itself, maybe some aluminium legs or just something that's a bit more modern, but I can see exactly why they went with the wood. It's nice that it actually saves some space as well, not just on the internals, but having the ability to put your keyboard and mouse underneath. It's just a really nice touch and something that I think, shows that they've paid attention to, I guess, the market that they're trying to aim this at. Now, it does actually serve as a very functional chassis, but that price point, very expensive, but no different again from what we'd see from Lian Li. So with that aside, I actually really like this chassis. There's only one gripe that I do have with it. Be careful with your monitor. We actually had some initial problems ourselves by when we put a monitor on top that had rubber feet. Well, I don't know what it is, but I think some of the substance that's inside the rubber just started to create little marks on top. But hopefully this is just an isolated incident with the monitor we had, but something that's definitely worth bearing in mind. Other than that, yes, I'd wholeheartedly recommend this chassis, but it all depends on if you really want to outlay either £299 in the UK or $299 plus taxes and shipping in the US. There you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know exactly what to do, and I will see you in the next one. See you later. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, I'm Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and I'm actually, I forgot how it starts. But you've got to remember that, and you've probably seen in our sort of studio rearrangement, the video that we've done,